Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News, and here are some of the top stories we've been following. The Alberta Clipper winds wreaked havoc on our region today, tipping over semi-trucks and causing power outages that sent hundreds of students home from school. Plus, Air Canada is making cuts that will put 1,700 employees out of work. And with more kids playing outside, Alberta Health says there's been a rise in tobogganing and sledding incidents.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. More than 110 km/h winds have blanketed Lethbridge and the southern region. At 4:30 this morning, Environment Canada issued special weather statements saying that winds could hit 120 km/h. With more on how the storm has impacted Lethbridge, Ainsley O'Reilly is on location.
Well, Jeanette, my foot is actually on our camera's tripod right now because if I take it off, the whole camera will blow away. I'm at St. Teresa of Calcutta School, one of 6 schools east of the Old Man River, to have to send students home because of the power outages. It's impossible to say how many buildings have been impacted by this because the city's database has been out all day long. On Stafford Drive, as well as other areas of the city, streetlights have been off, forcing motorists to treat them as 4-way stops. I spoke with Environment Canada today about this windstorm.
The Alberta Rockies, the lee of the Alberta Rockies, so that is the area east of the Alberta Rockies, just east, is a very common place for low pressure systems to form. And that's because the impulse, the energy, and the moisture will come off the Pacific, make its way across BC, and then be sort of disjointed as it passes over the Rocky Mountains. Once it gets over the mountains and reaches the prairies, sort of Alberta, it starts to reform again. So it makes it a very common place for low pressure systems to form. And we assign names to low pressure systems based on where they originate. So this low pressure system formed, just south of Edmonton, right around the Ponoka kind of area. So we call it an Alberta Clipper. Maybe this is, a storm of note for this year, but it does happen.
Thank you, Ainsley. Hope you're staying warm out there today. The windstorm wreaked havoc on our southern Alberta highways as well. This semi-tractor trailer tipped over on Highway 3 near Colehurst. According to Environment Canada, wind gusts as high as 140 km/h could be expected in wind-prone areas. Barnwell has already reported winds of 137 km/h. The winds are expected to diminish this evening. RCMP say a 31-year-old man has died while climbing alone on Crow's Nest Mountain in the Crow's Nest Pass. The Mounties say they were dispatched to an area known as the Chutes on Saturday night following a report of an injured hiker. They say search and rescue efforts trying to find the man had to turn back due to high winds, darkness, and the potential for avalanches. Search crews found the hiker the next day, but he had died of his injuries. Alberta Health Services says there's been a spike in injuries from tobogganing and sledding over the past month in both the Edmonton and Calgary health zones. Edmonton zone health facilities, which include Devon, Fort Saskatchewan, and Leduc hospitals, together had 139 visits for such injuries, compared to 106 visits last year during the same time period. Injuries in the Calgary zone are at 241 for the period, compared to 158 in 2020. A spokesman says it would be speculative to link the increase to more kids playing outside due to the COVID-19 restrictions. To avoid injuries, officials recommend people wear a helmet designed for cold weather and high speeds, and to avoid sledding alone or in the dark. Over the last 24 hours, Alberta Health Services has identified 875 new cases of coronavirus and completed almost 16,000 tests. The province's positivity rate is about 5.3%. There are 820 people in hospital, including 137 in ICU. Sadly, 23 new deaths were also reported in the last 24 hours. They ranged from 48 to 96 years of age. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney says the province hopes to start rolling out COVID-19 vaccines to the general public as early as this summer. He made the comments during a Facebook Live broadcast last night. Kenney says it will depend on vaccine supply from the federal government. A timeline on the Alberta Health Services website has a fall rollout for the general public, but the agency notes that's subject to change based on supply.
We'll probably be starting with the 75 plus population next week in the general population, the general community, because those are the people most at risk. As you probably know, the average age of COVID fatalities in Alberta is 82, 83, and so the people over 75 are most at risk. So we'll start with them, then we'll move it down to people in the age of either over 60 or 65. So that will probably start about a month from now. Don't hold me exactly to that, but I'm giving you a guesstimate that we'll be able to move to people over 65 at some point in February, probably mid-February, give or take, and then keep moving it down from there. In the summer, I think we'll be able to start moving to the general population regardless of age.
The Lethbridge School Division went over a boundary review for the city of Lethbridge on Tuesday evening. They'll be changing due to the growth in the facilities in high school and elementary levels, meaning that some students will have to switch schools. The chair of the Board of Trustees, Christine Light, says that there are three main catalysts to changing the boundaries for schools.
The first on the south side is we have a new elementary school opening up, Dr. Robert Plaxton Elementary School in the Southbrook area. And so because of that new school, we had to shift boundaries on the south side to be able to fill space, of course, at our new elementary school. On the west side, we have growing capacities, and we have capacities that are pushing at the seams. And so we needed to address that issue imminently, really, so that we could keep our students in lower numbered classes. So that's number two. And then number three is we took this as an opportunity to look at our north side boundaries. And I think the boundary committee did a really fantastic job bringing equity to those schools and cleaning up the lines that we had on the north side.
The Board of Trustees will approve the new boundary changes at a February 23rd board meeting. Air Canada is making cuts that will put 1,700 employees out of work. The airline is cutting its first quarter capacity by 25%, saying federal and provincial travel restrictions have had an immediate impact on bookings. It says the cuts will also affect more than 200 workers at its express carriers. This morning, the airline announced it will suspend services as of the 23rd of this month to Fredericton, as well as Gander and Goose Bay in Newfoundland and Labrador. Alberta country star Corb Lund has released a new video, but it's not of him singing or playing the guitar. Lund is criticizing the province's plan to allow for coal exploration in western Alberta. Lund says he's been researching the issue and says he's met with provincial ministers in the United Conservative government, members of Parliament, First Nations, and people who live in the area. Alberta has rescinded a decades-old policy that protected Rocky Mountain landscapes from coal mining.
Since the Lougheed government in the 70s, the Lougheed Conservative government put this act in place. It's called the coal policy or something similar to that. And the idea was they put years of study into it and years of consultation, and it was widely and deeply investigated. And they came to the conclusion that if this area was so pristine and so sensitive that if it was ever a surface mined, open pit mined, it couldn't be restored. And I agree with them. We've all seen the foothills. It's a beautiful country. So I don't know. I don't really like this, and I think we should all be aware of it. I think all Albertans should know about this, and probably all Canadians, really. And one of the biggest things, there's a lot of bad things about it, but the biggest one probably is water. Water. Because contained in this huge area are the headwaters of the Old Man River. You got the North Saskatchewan. You got the Red Deer River. And that's the drinking water, folks, for a good part of the province.
Southborough Regional Economic Development announced today that they have awarded $1,500 scholarships to two young students, Ashley Owen from Warner County and Brendan Shipper from Lethbridge County. The scholarship's purpose is to advance our agri-food sector by highlighting local up-and-comers.
It's attracting more and more people, I think. And then people who've grown up in this area have an interest in making it a better place, I think, too. So it's a win-win situation. We give them a little incentive to go ahead and further their education, and the whole region then reaps the rewards. It seems like every week or every month we hear something new, that somebody's starting something, another expansion is going in. It's just yeah. I think if you're going to get into agriculture, this is probably the best place in the country, especially in Western Canada.
Southgrow Regional Economic Development is an alliance of 28 communities in south central Alberta that represents more than 180,000 people. With gyms currently closed due to the COVID restrictions, there's been a huge trend toward buying home gyms and working out from home. But doing so when you have a baby might seem a bit tricky. Video journalist Micah Quinn explains how one mother is making working out fun for both baby and parent.
Charis Samuels Murdoch is offering a variety of workouts for parents and their babies through Zoom. The idea started from Samuels Murdoch wanting to connect with other mothers and share the experience she has as a fitness instructor.
So the workouts that I have planned, it's a 6-week class, and it's a combination of like accessible, so a little bit like boot camps, core strengthening, a bit of yoga in there. So they change every week, just to give some fun and variety, but also not to be like competitive, but just, to get moms to socialize, or dads to socialize, and just be active no matter what ability they are.
Samuels Murdoch does the workouts with her son Dylan, and she is encouraging parents to keep an open space for their babies during the workouts.
But we really use the baby as the weight that we're doing. So, different exercises like lunges, you can hold a baby, squats. If you're doing a downward dog, placing them down on the mat in front of you and kind of, leaning over them. Just any interaction with them.
Samuels Murdoch says that she wants to create a fun community.
And maybe connect with some other moms, and then going forward, having a little kind of active group that we could go out come spring.
The courses run from January 13th to February 17th. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
According to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, more than 7,300 provincial bureaucrats received pay raises during the lockdown, costing taxpayers $18.7 million, according to records the CTF obtained through a Freedom of Information request. Pay raises for provincial bureaucrats have cost taxpayers more than $245 million since 2015, when the economic downturn in Alberta began. The last broad Alberta government pay cut was 5% in 1994. In a press release, the CTF's Alberta Director, Franco Terrazzano, is quoted as saying, "We can't keep asking workers who lost their jobs or businesses to pay higher taxes so thousands of bureaucrats can collect bigger paychecks." The province of Ontario is reporting 2,961 new COVID-19 infections today and 74 more deaths in advance of a stay-at-home order taking effect. The province is set to announce details about how it plans to enforce the order. Residents must stay at home as of tomorrow, except for trips to the grocery store, getting exercise, and going to medical appointments. And BCN's Hal Roberts spoke with Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley about the stay-at-home order, who says Ontario's restrictions could be even worse than the Quebec ones recently imposed.
Look, I've been around the law long enough. I know that police have latitude. They have discretion on enforcing any law. Think about getting pulled over for a traffic ticket, and the police officer says, well, Hal, look, I understand why you were speeding. We'll let you off with a warning this time. That's officer discretion. But I think a lot of people are nervous about, okay, it's 2 p.m. and I'm walking down the street. Do I have a reason to walk down the street? Are the police going to stop me?
And we'll have more with Brian Lilley coming up after the business news. Montreal dog owners say their pets have brought them joy and distraction during Quebec's curfew to contain COVID-19. Dog owners are granted an exception to allow them to be outside during the 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew, but say they don't plan to take advantage of the rule.
Me personally, I didn't really mind because we take him here at like 6, and then after that he sleeps pretty much for the rest of the night. and we have a little patch of grass outside our place, so we just take him there if he needs to go in the night. So I wasn't that upset about it, but I mean, I could see how it wasn't cause for concern for a lot of people. It's been good. It's keeping me busy, and for me, it's really just an excuse to get outside. I know it sounds kind of cliche, but it is really nice to be able to get outside 3 times a day at least. And I can't use like laziness as an excuse because my dog's got to go out, so I got to bring him out no matter how tired I am. So that I really like that aspect of it, and just having him around the house, he's fun to be around. It brings everyone's morale up, I guess.
At first it was a bit scary because we like to walk our dogs often, and often it's at night because when you have a puppy you want it to go outside just before bed. But when they announced we could go out with the dogs after it was a nice thing to hear.
It's much better. It helps a lot with going outside, especially with the curfew and not being able to go anywhere at all. It helps a lot, and they're really sweet, and they keep you company, and they're always so much fun, full of love.
A Saskatchewan health official says the number of COVID-19 transmissions linked to bars is on the rise. Dr. Saqib Shahab, Chief Medical Health Officer, says more businesses have been slapped with fines for breaking public health restrictions. He says the problem is bar patrons mingling among tables, which results in COVID-19 outbreaks. Under Saskatchewan's public health orders, restaurant and bar seating must have a 2-meter distance and a maximum of 4 people can sit at one table. Yesterday, the province announced 248 new cases and 5 deaths. Ann Maines may be a name familiar to you. She used to be a host on 100 Huntley Street and has also been battling cancer. I chatted with Ann about the powerful response, the journaling her cancer journey has received from so many followers.
I started thinking, well, I know there's a lot of people out there that are hurting. This was last fall, and I thought if I can even help one person by sharing one of my devotionals on Facebook, then it would be worth it. And so I started doing that. I started just very timidly sharing here and there. And I was really surprised at the feedback I got. Before I knew it, I had thousands of people tracking with me in my devotionals, many of them writing back private messages to me, sharing their own difficult journey they were going through.
Watch that inspiring interview with Ann Maines discussing her cancer journey coming up later in our program. South of the border, U.S. President Donald Trump has been impeached a second time, but his actual trial will be delayed. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell blocked a quick Senate impeachment trial for Trump, but did not rule out that he might eventually vote to convict him. Last week, Trump egged on a throng of supporters to march on the Capitol building in Washington. The building was invaded by a mob trying to stop senators from accepting the Electoral College votes, acknowledging that Joe Biden won the election. 5 people died in the chaos. Meanwhile, President Trump says he wants, quote, no violence as impeachment nears.
As far as this is concerned, we want no violence, never violence. We want absolutely no violence. And on the impeachment, it's really a continuation of the greatest witch hunt in the history of politics. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to continue on this path. I think it's causing tremendous danger to our country, and it's causing tremendous anger. I want no violence. Thank you very much.
And here at home, a wind warning is in effect for much of our southern region in Alberta. Wind gusts as high as 140 kilometers per hour can be expected in wind-prone areas, but it should diminish this evening. We'll have a full look at weather coming up right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, the wind seems to be the topic of discussion today. Here's what's happening this evening, though, in Lethbridge. We could expect wind gusts up to 80 kilometers per hour this evening, but it should be diminishing much less by tomorrow. Overnight low tonight, -5 degrees. We could see a chance of flurries or showers developing this evening. By Thursday, all clear though. Sunny skies, high of 3 degrees expected tomorrow. Wind gusts only 50 kilometers per hour. I will certainly take that after a day, the day that we've had today for sure. Friday, mix of sun and cloud, high of 9 degrees. Saturday, sunshine and 5 degrees, 7 expected for Sunday with a mix of sun and cloud, high of 4 on Monday and high of 6 on Tuesday. Now, the average high for this time of year, -2, -14, the average low. High temperature on this day was back in 1943. It was 12 degrees, and it was a chilly -39 in 2005. Sun rose this morning at 8:24 a.m., and our sunset this evening was at 4:56 p.m., so just before 5 p.m. Day is getting longer. Let's take a look at what's happening across the nation tomorrow. Victoria and Vancouver, not too bad weather-wise at all. 8 degrees the high in Victoria, 7 in Vancouver, clearing up later on in the day. Edmonton, lots of sunshine, 40 km/h wind gusts expected there. The wind warning will be ended for Calgary as well, with mainly sunny skies, high of 0. They could get wind gusts still up to about 50 km/h. In Saskatchewan, both a wind warning and snow squall warning were in effect actually into this evening as well. They could get both wind and snow squalls. Into tomorrow, mostly blowing snow for both of those cities, -3 in Saskatoon and -2 in Regina. Winnipeg also could expect some periods of snow and blowing snow tomorrow as well. Now in Toronto, chance of flurries, risk of freezing rain. Same thing for Ottawa, high of 0 in Ottawa, 3 in Toronto. 1 the high expected to be in Montreal tomorrow with periods of light snow. And in the Maritimes, Fredericton could expect some flurries, high of -2, 4 degrees the high in Halifax with a chance of showers. Flurries also expected tomorrow in Charlottetown with a high of 1. 1 also the expected high in St. John's, Newfoundland with a chance of flurries. So there you go, that is your weather forecast.
Today's weather is brought to you, rain or shine, by the Gym in the North. Start your New Year's resolution today.
Amazon's lawyers want a U.S. federal judge to deny a request to reinstate the cloud service account for conservative social media network Parler. On Monday, Parler filed suit against Amazon, claiming a breach of contract and antitrust violation after its account was suspended and effectively removed from the internet. Amazon claims Parler has disregarded police violent content on its site before and after last week's insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. It, quote, demonstrated unwillingness to remove content that threatens public safety. Quebec-based retailer Alimentation Couche-Tard is making an offer worth about $25 billion to buy French-based grocery chain Carrefour. It says it's not clear at this stage if the talks will result in a deal. Couche-Tard operates convenience stores mostly under the Circle K brand in Canada, the U.S., and Europe, while Carrefour operates nearly 13,000 hypermarkets, supermarkets, and convenience stores in 9 countries. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 51 points to 17,934. The Dow was down 822 to 31,060. The S&P 500 was up 865 to 3,809. The Nasdaq was up 56 points to 13,128. West Texas Intermediate oil was down 35 cents to $52.39 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 3 cents to $2.73 US. Gold was up 40 cents to $1,845 US an ounce. Silver was unchanged at $25.22 US an ounce. Wheat is at $286 per metric ton. Barley is at $289. Canola is at $687. And corn is at $331 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 18 cents to $117.48. Feeder cattle were up 35 cents to $134.33. Lean hogs were down $1.65 to $66.85. And the Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours at 78.74 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, the Windy City took on a different meaning today as 120 km/h winds ripped through Lethbridge and surrounding area, knocking over vehicles, knocking out power, which led to the evacuation of many schools. Environment Canada issued a special weather statement that wind gusts as high as 140 km/h could be expected in some parts of the region. Coming up after the break, BCN's Hal Roberts speaks with Toronto Sun columnist about Ontario's stay-at-home order, which goes into effect tomorrow. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Even though Ottawa recently announced that Pfizer will be sending 20 million more doses of the vaccine our way, vaccine supply is a bit of an issue right now. To talk more about it in detail is one of our regular contributors, Brian Lilly of the Toronto Sun, joining me once again from Toronto. Now, Brian, millions more doses are on the way, but many Canadians are asking, when will we have access to them?
Well, it won't be right away. Look, this is good news. I'm not going to deny that the Prime Minister's announcement Tuesday morning outside of Rideau Cottage is not a good thing. Absolutely, it is. But at the beginning, when he first announced it, he didn't say when the doses would be coming. He had to be prompted, he had to be pushed a little bit on that. And the reason that's important is maybe you heard that the government actually turned down an additional 16 million doses of the Moderna vaccine. And the reason is it was going to come late in 2021. So we're talking sometime between October and December. Well, at that point, the government is hoping that everyone who wants a vaccine will get one. So adding 16 million doses at the end didn't make any sense. They made the right decision. So when he announced these 20 million doses, didn't give a date, it becomes, well, okay, are they coming next month? Are they coming in 2 months? Are they coming in 9 months? We need to know the details. The Prime Minister said in April or May. So I'm going to assume May and hope for April. And that's the way we have to deal with an awful lot of these things. So it's not going to speed up the process of inoculating frontline healthcare workers and people in nursing homes and the most vulnerable that we're all looking to do right across the country in the first quarter. We're still only expecting a total of 6 million doses of both Moderna and Pfizer between now and the end of March 31st, but it is a good increase that will come early in the second quarter. So kudos to the government for that.
Now let's discuss the current situation when it comes to vaccine rollout, Brian. Here in Alberta, Premier Jason Kenney says, without a big delivery, our province will be short about 20,000 doses next week. Now, where you are in Ontario, there are hospitals in both Ottawa and Toronto that had to stop vaccinating, but the feds say, hey, there are no issues here. Who should we believe?
Yeah, well, you know, one of the hospitals, or the hospital closest to Parliament Hill, the Ottawa Civic Campus, it is shut down for its vaccination clinic. It does not have any more doses. And that's a bad thing. Here in Toronto, steps from me, the University Health Network is out of doses. They're just some of the places that are out. And as you mentioned, Jason Kenney says 20,000 short in Alberta next week. Saskatchewan says they're going to be short. Brian Pallister in Manitoba says, yep, we have the ability to administer more doses than the federal government can deliver. And last week we talked about this. The Prime Minister said, he's frustrated by vaccines sitting in freezers instead of going into arms. And he was absolutely right. But since then, the provinces have ramped up. They were having some hiccups in the first couple of weeks of delivery. I think because they were all expecting the vaccines to be coming in at December 31st. They showed up on December 13th, and some of the provinces were injecting people on the 14th. I think a little bit later, depending on where you are. But that was a bit of a surprise, more than 2 weeks early. So they had to adjust, they had to ramp up quicker. Well, now they're at the point where they can administer more doses than the federal government can deliver at this point. It's going to be bumpy, and that's why I was hopeful when the Prime Minister said an additional 20 million doses that of the Pfizer vaccine, that it might be in the first quarter, because that would make a world of difference. Hal, the sooner that we can inoculate, I know everyone's worried about frontline healthcare workers and paramedics, and that's just become a priority group in Alberta. I get that. But to me, if we want to get society back to normal, the people we have to inoculate first are people over the age of 80 and then move down to the age of 70, because those are the people who are most likely to have severe negative impacts, from hospitalizations to going on into the ICU, to going on a ventilator, or the one that none of us want, to die from COVID-19. Those are the people who are overwhelmingly at risk. We need to make sure that they're looked after. Then, as the rest of us start getting the vaccine, we can start relaxing these restrictions that we're living with, that, it leads to this bizarre life that we've been in for the last 9-10 months.
We just interviewed a retired microbiologist from Germany, an award-winning microbiologist, Dr. Sucharit Bhakti, and he agreed with you as well. He said, those over the age of 70, most vulnerable, and they need the help more than ever. Now, you've advocated for approving AstraZeneca to Canada's vaccine supply chain. Is that something the Trudeau Liberals are really considering right now?
Well, Health Canada is evaluating it along with Johnson & Johnson's vaccine. Now, Johnson & Johnson seems to be a bit further on. Health officials late last week were saying, well, we're expecting new information at the end of January, beginning of February. that's information that will have to be evaluated. So if they're not getting it for another 2 to 3 weeks, it'll be some time before that vaccine is a possibility. The European Union is saying they may consider approving AstraZeneca by the end of January. And Health Canada is working in concert with the EU to look at what this rolling approval model. Normally you have to submit everything at once, Hal, and then they take a long time and they consider it. Right now, it's a rolling approval model. You get a bit of data, you send it in. You get another bit of data, you send it in. They evaluate it as you go. So there is the possibility that Health Canada could approve this vaccine within a couple of weeks. My view is if they're going to approve it before the EU and the US, because then we can scoop up doses before they get into the market and get ahead of ourselves. Couple of problems with this. Questions about the efficacy of AstraZeneca. The company has claimed as high as 90% efficacy, which is a bit below Pfizer and Moderna. But then others in trying to replicate are saying, no, it's closer to 62 to 72. So there are some questions around that. That might be part of the delay. You know, there are reasons at times that health officials do delay on these things. If you remember back to the spring, there was the rapid test from an Ottawa-based company called Spartan Bio. Everyone was hopeful for it. It got approved, and then it failed in the field. We don't want a repeat of that.
Now, another big question, of course, as well, Brian, if Ottawa does get the AstraZeneca vaccine, can the provinces get enough shots into the arms? And do they have the capacity, especially in the rural regions of the country?
Well, anywhere that you're into rural regions, remote areas of the country, it becomes more difficult, no doubt, especially if you're dealing with Pfizer's vaccine. It's why the territories have only received the Moderna vaccine, but you know, in a city like Lethbridge, there's no problem having the the Pfizer vaccine, and we're even learning how to transport it. If you remember early on, we were told you can't move it. Well, now they're figuring out how to do it. AstraZeneca is not as difficult to move around, so that would be a bonus. Even if it's not quite as doesn't give as much protection, it would give enough that most people would be protected from the virus from this drug. So, you know, will the provinces be able to administer the doses? Everyone I'm talking to is saying yes. Absolutely, there were hiccups along the way, but they've built capacity. To give you an idea, I was talking with retired General Rick Hillier, who is leading Ontario's distribution task force, and I said, General, we're at 15,000 doses a day now. How do we get to 150,000 doses a day? That's where we need to be to vaccinate the population of Ontario, which is 14.7 million people. And he said, Brian, we're going to go from vaccination clinics in places like hospitals to making sure you can get this in your doctor's office or in your pharmacy, or mass vaccination clinics in community centers. He even described saying, you know what, maybe we take a school district and we shut down school for a day, and think of how many days have been lost for schooling due to COVID-19, but you shut it down for one day, the school buses come in, they bring in all the teachers, all the principals, all the kids, they all get vaccinated that day. He says that would be a way to move things along. You know, we've seen vaccination clinics set up in not only in hospitals now, but in hockey rinks. We're going to see more of that going on across the country. I think the provinces, you know, after a bumpy start, will be able to deliver once they get the supply.
A recent poll by Angus Reid says more and more people are on board. They're interested in receiving the vaccine, but not here in Alberta. You know, Brian, a lot of the friends that I've spoken to who are not going to be getting the vaccine, they're taking a wait-and-see approach. They want to see if there are any long-term detrimental effects before they move ahead.
And that was common across the entire country. And to give you an example, so Alberta right now is at 47% say, yeah, I'll take the vaccine right now. And then there's a bunch of people saying, you know, well, I'll wait and see. And then a smaller group that says, no, I'm never taking it. A couple of months ago, Alberta and Ontario were tied in terms of the number of people that would say, well, actually, I believe Ontario was just a point or two lower than Alberta. But they were both below 50% and saying, yeah, I'll take the vaccine as soon as I can get it. Well, because people weren't sure. Now we've had several weeks of the vaccine. Alberta hasn't moved, but Ontario's gone up 21 points in terms of people saying, I'll take it. You know, as soon as you let me know, I'll take it. There are going to be some people, Hal, who will never take the vaccine, who think that this is new technology, we can't trust it, these have been rushed. You know, I've been looking at the papers, I've been looking at the science. I'm not worried at this point, and I can be skeptical of these things. When people tell me, oh, we have to always trust the experts, I remind them of things like thalidomide. I'm not going to jump at something without giving careful consideration. But having looked at the process that these vaccines have gone through, I'm comfortable. It's better than the alternative of you or a loved one getting sick from COVID-19. If you're over the age of 70, which my parents are, well, you're facing a far higher chance of a fatality than someone my age. I do want to be able to see my parents. And I think that's the view of an awful lot of Canadians.
You know, I had some friends as well tell me recently why they weren't getting the vaccine. I said, well, why is that? They said, well, you never buy the first year make and model of a car that comes out. You want the manufacturer to kind of work out the bugs a little bit, 2 or 3 years down the road, and then I'll possibly think about buying that car. I thought that was an interesting analogy, you know, when it comes to a vehicle.
There's a lot of Canadians in that camp, yeah. Absolutely.
Now, Brian, new lockdown measures have been imposed starting with the curfew in Quebec, and now more measures for both Ontario and Saskatchewan. What are some of the highlights we need to know?
Well, curfew in Quebec is the biggest one. I mean, between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m., you're not allowed outside of your house unless it's for essential reasons, like going to work. You can be stopped and asked where you're going. You can face incredible fines. You know, some people have tried to get around this. There's a woman in Sherbrooke, Quebec, who was walking her husband. She had her husband on a dog leash. The police were having none of that. They said, you're yanking our chain. And they're facing, I believe it's $1,500 fines apiece for that little stunt. In Ontario, we dodged a curfew, but we may have something worse. We're facing a stay-at-home order. And, you know, this will come into effect midnight from Wednesday into Thursday. So, you know, we'll have to wait and see how the enforcement goes, because there's talk of, well, police have wide latitude. Look, I've been around the law long enough. I know that police have latitude. They have discretion on enforcing any law. Think about getting pulled over for a traffic ticket and the police officer says, well, Hal, look, I understand why you were speeding. We'll let you off with a warning this time. That's officer discretion. But I think a lot of people are nervous about, okay, it's 2 p.m. and I'm walking down the street. Do I have a reason to walk down the street? Are the police going to stop me? There's a lot of people nervous about that. We've had some other changes into retail hours. Even our liquor stores are going to be closing at 8 p.m. So the government's going to take a haircut there. The wine shop down the street for me has to close 3 hours early. There's a lot of changes that are coming to Ontario. Saskatchewan extending their rules for another 2 weeks. They were supposed to run out, I believe, this coming weekend, and they're going now until the end of January. So, you know, it's the same issue across the country. Case counts are too high, hospitalizations are too high, and intensive care unit admissions are too high. For people that think that this is just about case counts and daily case counts, and I hear that every day, Hal, they say, well, this is just a case-demic and nothing's happening. Well, I can tell you here in Ontario that we're looking at more than half of our ICU beds being taken up by COVID-19 patients within a couple of weeks. And if that happens, well, what about people who have a heart attack? They have kidney failure. They're in a car accident. They need intensive care unit beds as well where they live. If, you know, more than 1,000 of the 2,000 available are taken up by COVID-19 patients who are among the most intensive in terms of the care they need, that takes away beds from other people. So this is about more than case counts across much of the country at this point.
Brian, we only have about a minute left here in our interview, but tell me something. I've heard rumors that we may be seeing an election possibly in the spring or the fall. What are you hearing?
Well, you know, there was a lot of talk about that, especially with the cabinet shuffle. Navdeep Bains leaving cabinet, Omar Al-Gabra being brought in. Was Justin Trudeau telling his ministers, hey, you've got to be in line because we're ready for a spring election? We do know that the Prime Minister did tell the Liberal Party executive, be ready for a campaign this spring. I think that he wanted one in the fall, didn't get it. He wants one at a time when perhaps the vaccines, let's say 20 million extra doses, are showing up, and he can take credit for that. Don't underestimate the idea that politicians will use the pandemic for their own re-election chances. We've already seen it in British Columbia and in New Brunswick, where they didn't have to go to an election. I'd say the same thing about Scott Moe, but he'd already delayed an election that was overdue because of the pandemic, and they really didn't have a choice anymore.
And the Prime Minister definitely wants a majority government, so remains to see what will happen. One of our regular contributors, Brian Lilly, joining me once again from Toronto. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Hal.
Our next guest knows firsthand what it's like for life to take an unexpected turn. Ann Maines is the television host of A Better Us and the former host of 100 Huntley Street, which we air right here on Miracle Channel. And 1 year ago, Maines received a devastating phone call from her doctor informing her of a cancer diagnosis. And she's journaled her way through this journey over the past year and has now turned that journal into a devotional to help others. Joining me now from her home in Waterloo, Ontario is Ann Maines. Ann, welcome to the show. We are so happy to have you with us today.
Thank you, Jeanette. It is my privilege to be with you.
Now, you've had such a brave journey over the past year, but maybe take us back to that day that you found out you had cancer. Your husband was away that day, right? Maybe tell us the story.
Yes, he was away. Well, nothing prepares you for the phone call from the doctor. Ron was 2 hours away playing golf in a fundraising golf tournament, and I was all alone at home when the doctor called me that the results of a recent biopsy had come back. Now, I had had mammograms for years, faithfully, and they had always been fine, but this last mammogram was different. And so the doctor then sent me for further testing, and the biopsy then showed that there were cancer cells present. She was shocked, and I, of course, was shocked. After I hung up the phone with her, I didn't know what to do, Jeanette. I thought, do I call Ron? Do I let him know? Or do I give him one last day to just be carefree and normal? I thought, well, I'll just call him and kind of feel out the situation, just see what's going on. And so as soon as he answered the phone, he was laughing. And the first thing he said to me was, honey, I think I might have just won the putting competition. And my heart sunk. I thought, oh no, he's having such a good day. So I didn't know what to do, but I thought Ron would want to know. So he slipped away so we could chat, and I told him, and he said to me, honey, give me 10 minutes, let me get my golf clubs. I'm gonna come home. I'll call you from the car. And so for the next hour and a half, basically, we talked and prayed and cried on the phone. And it was during the course of that conversation, Jeanette, that I said, I really feel like God wants me to journal my journey. There was no purpose for it. I just had that sense. And so he said to me, well, I'll be home in about 45 minutes. Let's hang up and you write your first journal entry. And that's what I did.
Oh, wow. So right there and then that led you to start journaling right away that very day, and it just you just kept going from there. Was it sort of a way to process what you were going through a little bit?
Exactly. That's exactly what was happening. I just sensed that God wanted me to write down what I was learning through this unexpected journey. Every time I journaled, every time I wrote a devotional, I started with where I was that day. From like a month after my diagnosis, I had surgery. A couple of weeks after that, it was revealed that I would need chemotherapy, which I totally did not expect. I didn't see that coming. In fact, when the doctor told me that, I literally doubled over in her office. I couldn't believe I was going to need chemotherapy. But you know what? It was just part of my journey. And as you can imagine, I suffered all the side effects that come with chemotherapy. I mean, I had severe nausea, severe fatigue, and I lost all of my hair. And as a woman, that's kind of hard to take. But in fact, I'm still regrowing it. I'm sporting my new wig here, just trying to feel as normal as possible. But throughout the whole journey, Jeanette, every milestone that I had, every dark night of the soul, I would just pick up my laptop and my Bible, and I would just start journaling. And it was through those journaling times that God really brought healing and comfort to my spirit.
Right. And this daily journaling you started actually publishing, right, on social media? So that's a very public forum to start your, to share personal thoughts. So what was that like?
It is. Well, after I had written several devotionals and I just found such healing in them as I was writing them. I just felt God's Holy Spirit just bringing healing to my spirit. I started thinking, well, I know there's a lot of people out there that are hurting. This was last fall, and I thought if I can even help one person by sharing one of my devotionals on Facebook, then it would be worth it. And so I started doing that. I started just very timidly sharing here and there. And I was really surprised at the feedback I got. Before I knew it, I had thousands of people tracking with me in my devotionals, many of them writing back private messages to me, sharing their own difficult journey they were going through. And it wasn't always health related. Sometimes it was relationship or financial or whatever. But it was something difficult that they're going through. And many of them would say, Anne, these are so helpful. You need to consider putting them into a book. And so that's kind of where the idea for the book came from.
Right. So that came from people that were following you and you're like, hey, this is a good idea. So this led you to actually publish your journal entries into a book called Coffee with Him, Mornings with God on an Unexpected Journey, right? So it was released on June 10th of this year and it quickly became the #1 best-selling devotional on Amazon Canada. So congratulations on that, by the way. That's
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you. You know, Jeanette, when God first led me to start writing these devotions over a year ago, there was no purpose for them. It was just me kind of stepping out in obedience, saying, okay, God, if you want me to journal, if this is the best way you have me to heal through this journey, here I am, I'm going to do it. Little did I know what would happen as a result of the 31-day devotional that this process became. And I'm just so thankful to God that He was able to use the lessons that I learned, because there are so many dark nights of the soul when you're walking this kind of a journey. And especially now during COVID, there are so many dark nights of the soul for so many people. And so He knew, even then, a year ago, that the lessons I was going to learn would be used to help other people now.
That's amazing. So now, to be clear, it's a devotional. It's not a biography or a memoir of your journey, right? So why don't you explain a little bit? Tell us about the book. What's in it?
Well, it's like I said, it's a 31-day devotional. The very first day, I encourage readers to just pick it up first thing in the morning, Coffee with Him. So grab your Bible and the book, the Coffee with Him book, and a cup of coffee, and just go somewhere private with the Lord. Have those few extra moments with Him before you start your day. That's what I'm encouraging readers to do. Each day is a very short reading. You can read it in less than 5 minutes. Each day ends with what I like to call sips to savor. So it's on the track with the coffee theme. And then, so those are questions that you ask yourself about the devotional. How can that relate to my life today? And then there's a prayer starter, where sometimes if you're in a difficult time, you really don't know what to say to God. I know I had lots of times like that through my journey, where you just kind of sit there and say, okay, God, I've got so many questions. I don't know what to say. I wrote just a very short prayer starter at the end of each day's devotional, where it just begins a conversation with the Lord based on what you just read in that day. And then there's a notes section. I don't know about you, but I love taking notes when I'm going through a devotional. I like to journal, write down what I'm thinking, what's going through my mind as I'm reading what the author is saying and what the scriptures are saying. So that's basically the book. And the very first day of the 31 days is the very first devotional I wrote on that day, June the 10th, 2019, when my husband was still driving home to be with me. And that's how it starts and continues for 31 days.
It must have been hard for you to pick which 31 to put in your book, was it? How long did that take?
It was very hard, because these are, like you said, Jeanette, these are so personal. And I share a lot in the book of my journey. I talk a lot about the day I lost my hair. Just a week into my second chemo treatment, I had 8 chemo treatments 2 weeks apart beginning the middle of September and finishing the week before Christmas. And just a week after my second chemo treatment, my hair started coming out in handfuls, like literally handfuls. And I knew that it was going to all come out, I was told. So I called my longtime friend and hairdresser, Ely, and I said, Ely, can you come to my house and shave my head? And so he did. He came, and I sat with my eyes closed, and I held my husband's hand, and I cried through most of it as Ely shaved my head. And that's one of the devotionals in the book, because it was during that time that I sensed God's presence in such a sweet way. You know, when our heart is broken, when we're going through something that we just did not see coming, it doesn't take God by surprise, and it doesn't take him unawares. He is with us. He is right there with us, holding us, if we'll only let him. And I don't know about you, Jeanette, but I found that throughout my life, in some of those darkest times, those are the times that you learn more and more about the character of God, the love of God, the depth of the intimacy he wants to have with us. There's a verse in Isaiah that I just love. It's Isaiah 45, verse 3. I think it's the NIV version. It says, God says to you and to me, he says, I will give you treasures in darkness, riches stored in secret places, so that you will know I am the Lord your God. And that says to me, as we are walking through those dark places, those dark times, not evil darkness, but confusion, where you're floored, you don't know what's going on. As we walk through those dark times, we're not alone. God is with us. And not only is he with us, he has gifts for us in that darkness that we can only receive as we walk through those dark times. And for each of us, they look different. Some of them are very obvious, and some of them are more subtle. But they're tailor-made for each of us on our journey.
Yeah. Now, speaking of your journey, obviously it's been with cancer, but obviously this devotional is for anyone going through any unexpected journey. And as you're just explaining all of that, that really makes sense to me. That any unexpected journey, someone could pick up your book and probably just get so much out of it.
And you know what? God's word is filled with promises to us that he is with us no matter what we are going through. And that's another part of the book is, as I was walking through this, my husband and I decided to call it a healing journey. So as I've been walking through this healing journey, there were so many Bible verses that just became so precious to me. So at the back of the book, I put over 100 of my favorite verses. So they're there for you if you're going through a difficult time. They're listed there because God's word is precious to us, and he promises to be with us no matter what we go through. If we'll only come to him, dig into his word, receive from him the healing and the comfort that he is offering to us.
Yeah. Now, since then, you've had more of a positive diagnosis, right? Tell us where you are right now.
Yes, I have. Earlier this year, the doctors pronounced me cancer-free.
Wow.
And I am so thankful for that. I'm still healing, as you can imagine, but I'm just so thankful that that is the direction my journey has taken. And I'm so excited to be able to share with others that God can be with you too, no matter what you're going through.
That's amazing. And I'm so happy to hear that you are cancer-free, so you are in remission now.
Yes,
That's
yes.
wonderful. Where can people find your devotional, Anne?
Well, we have set up a very easy website for anyone. If you want to get my book, it's coffeewithhim.ca. coffeewithhim.ca, and that'll link you to exactly where you can get the book.
What has been the feedback so far from people?
Oh, it's been amazing. There have been so many people who have sent me private messages saying the devotionals in the book are meeting them exactly where they are. Many have said they are in the middle of a cancer journey. Many have said they've come through the other side. But I'm amazed, Jeanette, how many people are relating to the book that aren't having a health crisis. I heard from a lady last week. her husband was just last week killed in a motorcycle accident, and she had just started reading my book, and she said that it's ministering to her. And so I am just so thankful to God that he is using me, of all people, to be able to reach out to them and bring his love and his healing and his comfort to them.
That's amazing. You guys are just going through such a big journey together, and your husband Ron has been with you through this the whole way.
Every step of the way. Yeah, Ron, he went with me to every chemo treatment. He was there holding my hand. He's been my rock. He likes to say he's my rock with a lowercase r, because Jesus is my rock with the uppercase R.
Aw. Well, and it looks like we are out of time. Unfortunately, I could go on talking to you all day, but Ann Mays, television host of Better With Us and now author of Coffee with Him, Mornings with God on an Unexpected Journey. And it's been wonderful having you on the show. And all the best to you and your husband as you continue to go through this journey together.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. It's been my pleasure.
Mm-hmm. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thank you for watching.